This video is a road trip of the Beckworth Trail from the Truckee Meadows, Nevada, or Sparks, Nevada, to American Valley, California, which is currently Quincy, California. This is part 1 of 2, and we're going to start right here on McCarran Boulevard, heading south. From South McCarran Boulevard, we can wind our way over to South Stanford Way and find a place to park. From there, we're going to just take the sidewalk and a walking trail down to the Truckee River, which takes us to the point where the Beckworth Trail breaks off from the California Trail. T markers are placed there by Trails West, Inc., and those are what we're going to follow during this whole trip. There are 50 of these T markers along the trail, and we're going to hit every one of them. And this is the beginning of the Beckworth Cutoff. From here, we're going to go across the open sage plain to the Sparks Municipal Court off of C Street and 15th, which is where our second marker is located. The markers are fabricated from steel railroad rails. They're cut and welded to provide a cross member at the top of a vertical rail post to form a T. A brief immigrant diary quote is engraved on an aluminum plate that is fastened to the cross member. We're going to continue our way through the sagebrush up Panther Valley to Ferrari McLeod Boulevard, which is where our next marker is located. Turning onto Ferrari McLeod, I was very tempted to drive up on the back of this truck. And thinking about that, I drove right past the marker, which is right there. The immigrants made their way up out of the Truckee Meadows, through the Panther Valley, and up towards Golden Valley. This parking lot at Riva's Mexican Restaurant is where the next marker is. This plaque and marker are located in Golden Valley off of North Hills Boulevard at Beckworth Drive. As you have seen, the Beckworth Trail branched off from the main California road at Truckee Meadows and ended at Bidwell's Bar, a mining camp now under the waters of Lake Oroville. It came into being after James Pearson Beckwith discovered a new pass over the Sierra Nevada in 1850. From here, the trail heads to Peavine Springs off of Red Rock Road, which is on the south side of Stead, Nevada. Peavine Mountain is off to the left and provides spring water flowing down to this point. The marker's located inside a fenced area just off of Red Rock Road and the freeway offering. From here, we're going to travel to our 6th marker, up North Virginia Street to Dry Lake Summit. Up and over the hill, through more sagebrush, to Dry Lake Summit. We also get a good view of White Lake in the Lawton Valley. In 1849, Beckwith was operating a trading post at Sonora, but the next spring he joined in the search for a gold lake, said to be somewhere in the northern part of the state. This prospecting trip led directly to the development of the Beckworth Trail. In here we have just entered into the south end of Long Valley on our way towards Beckworth Pass, which is up here to the left. As you can see off to the right, we're paralleling 395 north. As you've probably figured out, we're traveling along an approximation of where the Beckworth Trail was. Seeing as how it was 175 years ago when the pioneers were traveling along here, we're doing the best we can. Chances are that we are actually on the trail. Some parts may be to the right or to the left, but we're traveling in the general direction. And the T markers that are placed by Trails West are certainly extremely helpful. In 1854, Beckworth related the story of his life to Thomas D. Bonner, and at the same time changed the spelling of his name to Beckworth. From Dry Lake Summit up through Long Valley to the 7th marker along Long Valley Creek. The plaque on this marker reads, "We descended into the head of a beautiful valley. Here we found things requisite for camping. Our road led immediately down the valley from camp, with a good level road all the way. John C. Thornley, August 16, 1852. Beckworth noted on his prospecting trip out of Sonora, "While on this expedition, I discovered what is known as Beckworth Pass in the Sierra Nevada. From some elevations over which we had passed, I remarked a place far away to the southward that seemed lower than any other. I made no mention of it to my companion, but thought that at some time I would examine it further." From here, we're going to pull back from the trail a little bit over to what is known as Hallelujah Junction and get a good view of the Beckworth Pass compared to the other mountains that are around it. As you can see, it's a lot lower than anything there. Continuing up Long Valley, we're on Scott Road, and we're going to connect to Conkley Lane. As we drive along Conkley Lane, which is a very good approximation of the Beckworth Trail, notice to the left on the hill there looks like a roadbed. That roadbed is actually a narrow gauge railroad bed. Back in the 1880s, the railroad ran from Reno to Lakeview, Oregon, and was known as the Nevada, California, Oregon Railway. That rail bed is a spur that ran off of the main railway over to Davis Mill, which is now known as Gray Eagle, California. We just went under the new highway, Route 70, and are making our way up Beckworth Pass on the old highway that was built in 1937. And here we are cresting the top of Beckworth Pass, 5,221 feet, substantially lower than Donner Summit at around 7,200 feet. Here we're on our way to the Beckworth marker that was dedicated in 1937, and note the narrow gauge railroad off to the left on that hill. At the top of Beckworth Pass, along I-70, and note Beckworth Peak, the snow-capped mountain straight ahead. Here's looking back, and here's an old picture of the marker on the old highway. Upon renovation of the highway, the marker was moved about 100 feet to this location, which is just south of Highway 70. From the marker, we're going to now head downhill towards Chilkoot in a westerly direction. Straight ahead are Beckworth Peak and Sugarloaf Mountain. You can barely see them in the video, but that is what the pioneers used as a geographical reference as to where the trail went. Here we just got onto Chilkoot Avenue, which leads us to the 8th marker. The plaque on the 8th marker reads, "Tro informed us we were in California when Father gave 3 loud cheers, which echoed from the rocks and hills about us. Willie said that he would not like to spend his life in California if this was it." Harriet S. Ward, October 1st, 1853. Beckworth set out to raise funds to build a road through the pass to American Valley, now the site of Quincy, and to make a pack trail between Bidwell's Bar and American Valley, suitable for wagons. His fundraising efforts took him to Marysville, then the supply center of the northern mines. In Marysville, Beckworth was assured of financial assistance by the mayor, and he began to construct a new road. Traveling in a westerly direction along Chilkoot Avenue, that's Beckworth Peak off to the left, and Sugarloaf, the volcanic-looking mountain, off to the right. Getting back on Highway 70, we're going to pass by Summit Schoolhouse that was built in the 1860s and operated up into the early 1900s. Traveling along Highway 70, heading in a westerly direction, the trail is about 50 yards off to the left, and our next trail marker is up here just on the right. The trail marker reads Beckworth Valley, which is now Sierra Valley. We beheld a large valley spread out before us, surrounded by majestic mountains covered with lofty pine and snow. 6 miles down, the valley brought us into a camp of the banks of the branch of the Feather River. We continue to our next marker, which is in the town of Beckworth. Beckworth Peak off to the left, Sugarloaf Mountain off to the right, and the Sierra Valley Buttes right in the middle. The trail continues between the Buttes and Sugarloaf Mountain. As we continue on, I noticed something on this section just above the blue line, which looks like it's either a road or may have been part of the trail. You can see it really clearly about here. Moving just north a little bit onto Madeline Road, you can see the buttes there, as well as Sugarloaf off to the right. The road heads in a direct westerly direction, and we're headed towards the town of Beckworth. The trail continues on through this pasture here and on to the Ranger District Road just north of the Beckworth Airport. Little town of Beckworth is straight ahead of us. Now on the east end of Beckworth on Main Street, heading towards our next marker. This next marker talks about the headwaters of the Feather River, which flow out of the Sierra Valley just south of here. The road now continues down the valley 13 miles. Here is a spring of water near the road on the left, also a small stream, the headwaters of the Feather River, past several mountains called buttes. Henry T. Baldy, September 8, 1852. Here we're going to continue west out of the town of Beckworth to our next stop. Still heading west, I hopped onto a section of the old railroad bed we had talked about earlier going over Beckworth Pass. This old railroad bed is off of the A23 and parallels Highway 70 as we head towards the rest stop. We're now at the rest stop where marker 11 is located. The plaque reads, "Beckworth's house is the first house that I have seen since I left Laramie. At Beckworth's house, the roads fork. The left hand goes to 76 in Marysville. The right hand is called Beckworth's route to Marysville." John F. Freeman, September 13th, 1852. Heading west from the rest stop, we can see traces of the old road as well as Ramelli Ranch in the distance, which is the original location of the Beckworth cabin. In 1852, Beckworth built a trading post, which he called the Warhorse Ranch. This is the original location of where that cabin stood. The cabin has been moved, but the original house, as you can see, is still there. Here's the cabin in its original location. The cabin was donated to Plumas County by Wes Harbart in 1985 and moved to its present location, also donated by Mr. Harbart in 1986. At the time of moving, the foundation was found to consist of half-length logs with a different notching pattern than the rest of the structure. This lending inferential support to the contention that the structure was moved into its pre-1985 location with the half-length logs, compensating for the slope it was placed on. As can best be determined, the cabin's relocation is within 200 feet of its original setting. The cabin was placed at the same direction as the original setting, and you can see it right here, how it sits right now. The cabin sits on Rocky Point Road, Highway 24, just off of Grizzly Creek. All the items on the table here are items that were found under the original location of the cabin and on display when this little museum is open. There's a single docent that opens and operates this cabin, so it's only available to the public on weekends in the summertime. From here, we're going to make our way up to the next marker, which is along Grizzly Road and Old Grizzly Road, paralleling Grizzly Creek. The trail goes along the road as well as just off of the road, but it's making its way up to Grizzly Valley, which is now Lake Davis. This turn is to Old Grizzly Road, which leads us to our next marker, which is just off to the left. The inscription on the plaque reads, "The road forks, the left and best to 76, but we were persuaded by all means to keep the Beckworth Trail through a dense forest of cedar, pine, and fir." John Clark, Virginia, August 28, 1852. Continuing up Grizzly Road on our way to Lake Davis. I shot this portion of the trail in late spring, turned on to the ramp here to Honker Cove on Lake Davis, and stopped short because the snow kept getting thicker and thicker, and it was also very wet snow, so I decided to walk in. And here we are at the Honker Cove boat ramp through Grizzly Valley, which is now Lake Davis. The marker reads, "Passing on from Beckworth Ranch on the right-hand road, about 7 miles, camped in a small valley with a spring of good water and entirely surrounded by pine timber." The trail went right across there. While I was taking in the beauty of the lake, I happened to look up, and there was a bald eagle flying by. I shot this with an iPhone, so I couldn't really get close to him, but you'll see him here in just a sec. We're moving on to marker 14 at the west side of Davis Lake at Freeman Creek. And here's a view from Smith Peak, giving an approximate view of where the trail crossed Grizzly Valley. It's pretty astonishing that 175 years later, an original trail swale is still visible on both sides of the road. As we reach marker number 14, the plaque reads, "Hard to find a heavier and taller growth of timber in the world than what grows on these mountains. Not unusual here to find those which measure from 25 feet to 50 feet each in circumference, and from 250 to 300 feet high." East Owen, August 26, 1852. Headed up the west side of Lake Davis Road, we're on our way to marker 15 at Grizzly Valley. Arriving at marker 15, the plaque reads, "Drove 12 miles and camped in Grizzly Valley. so called for the abundance of grizzly bear found in this vicinity. East Owen, August 27, 1852. Looking north up Big Grizzly Creek and on our way to marker 16. As we move north, we're going to be getting into the remnant of the Dixie Fire that happened in 2021. This was California's largest forest fire at over 1 million acres. The plaque on trail marker 16 reads, "From the west side of the Grizzly Valley, a narrow valley makes off in a westerly course. Down this, the road runs occasionally passing through points of timber. This valley is bordered by high mountains on either hand." D.B. Andrews, August 12, 1852. Also, this marker is on a section of the original trail. From here, we're on our way to marker 17. The pioneers reported that the road was principally good through the Grizzly Valley. This is the marker of Blakeless Creek, and from the marker, a trail trace goes west across the meadow. After crossing the meadow, we start to climb to marker 18. Marker 18 is at the aptly named Immigrant Creek. The plaque reads, "Started early in the morning, crossed a small run, which was bridged, and commenced climbing an arm of the Sierra Nevada mountains." East Owen, August 28, 1852. As you can see, I filmed this in different seasons. This was in November of 2023. Ascending the hill to Grizzly Ridge, trying to find marker 19. To get to the marker, I had to hike about 700 yards to the upper end of a ridge top near 3 pine trees and a small deck of old logs. The ridge top, to get to it, was very steep, and the pioneers had to use a lot of block and tackle to get their wagons up the very steep portion from marker 18. The plaque on marker 19 reads, "Started early to cross the mountains, had a very steep road, steepest I ever saw. Took till noon to go 2 miles. When we got to the top, it was the most sightly place I ever saw." Christopher Smith, September 26, 1852. After ascending to Grizzly Ridge, this is looking back at the open ridgetop where marker 19 is located. Heading now to marker 20, we're heading north along Grizzly Ridge, along the original trail. While Beckworth was promoting his trail, other forces were working against him. The most detrimental of these was the fact that the year 1851 turned out to be California Trail's least traveled year, between 1848 and 1859, with less than 1,000 people using it. Some of the reasons for this decline included the descriptions of the 1850 hardships on the Lassen Trail having reached the east. Further, many miners were returning home broke, reducing, at least in the short run, the enthusiasm for seeking fortunes in gold fields. Also at the same time, Oregon instituted their liberal land acquisition policy that year, diverting many people who had originally planned on going to California. Because of the low number of people on the California Trail to begin with, and fewer yet who used Beckworth's Trail, favorable comments regarding this new route were probably not quickly received back east. Unfortunately, this form of advertisement, word of mouth, may have been critical to the success of the trail. Beckworth, who had a reputation as a storyteller, aka liar, would probably have deterred knowledgeable wagon masters from using his route based on his word alone. Nonetheless, despite all this bad news, over 25,000 wagons passed over the Beckworth Trail. Moving on to marker 20, the Grizzly Ridge descent. The plaque reads, "We now take down one of the ragged spurs so long and steep it was necessary to save the wagons from destruction to take all the cattle off but one yoke. Then a good-sized tree made fast to the rear of each wagon. John Clark, Virginia, August 29, 1852. A nice view here of Greenhorn Ranch and the town of Quincy, or American Valley, off in the distance. As you can see here, the trail gets really steep. Also, in many sections of this, we are traveling along the actual trail on our way to marker number 21. The trail continues to descend down the ridge line to a spot just up the hill from Greenhorn Ranch. Still descending along the ridgeline, we reach marker 21. The plaque on marker B21 reads, "Passing down this pitch, some 20 or 30 rods, the road turned to the left, still descending, with very deep dust and some stone. The descent still continued, occasionally descending exceedingly steep places." D.B. Andrews, August 13, 1852. From here, we're going to descend the ridge line on our way to marker 22, which is just north of Spring Garden along Highway 70. Reaching Highway 70 and the Estray Creek meadow just south of Spring Garden, we needed to descend this little hill and go across the railroad tracks. Unfortunately, there's my buddy giving the universal sign of somebody who just turfed, and I didn't heed his warning on my way down the hill. We brushed ourselves off and continued on to marker number 22. The plaque on the marker reads, "When we reach the Willow Ranch, we camp and buy provisions at the usual high price. Our company looked hungry, poor, dusty, sunburned, and ragged. Our oxen nearly gone in, no cud, and 2 to make a shadow." John Clark, Virginia, August 29, 1852. Here's a good view looking north along Estray Creek, heading past the Williams Loop towards Massac and marker number 23. This is Old State Highway 402A down Greenhorn Creek Canyon. From here we're going to hop on to 70 heading north and going to pull over at the rest stop, which is where marker number 23 is located. From here, the pioneers traveled down Greenhorn Creek Canyon, which they called 9 Mile Canyon. They crossed the river several times, exclaiming it was as rough road as wagons ever were driven over. Marker 23 at the rest stop along Highway 70. From here we cut off Highway 70 to Chandler Road and the beginning of American Valley. Gonna end up at New England Ranch and Quincy Junction Road to see marker number 24. Beckworth quoted in his autobiography from 1856, "On my return to the American Valley, I made known my discovery to a Mr. Turner, proprietor of the American Ranch, who entered enthusiastically into my views. It was a thing he said he had never dreamed of before. If I could but carry out my plan and divert travel into the road, he thought I should be made a man for life." From here we're going to head over to marker number 24, which is in Quincy on the corner of Jackson Street and Coburn, to the Plumas County Museum. And here we've made it to marker number 24, right across the courthouse in Quincy, California, and right at the front of the Plumas County Museum. This is the end of part 1, which is the first part of our road trip along the Beckworth Trail.